My girlfriend said I was not impressive enough, so I walked away 3 years. That is how long Vanessa and I were together before everything fell apart at a restaurant downtown. We were sitting across from each other, sharing a quiet dinner like we had done 100 times before. The kind of place with exposed brick and Edison bulbs where everyone wore black and ordered things I could barely pronounce. She loved these places. I went along because it made her happy. Then she set down her chopsticks, looked at me with this strange mix of pity and frustration, and said something I will never forget. My friends say you are comfortable, John. You are not ambitious enough. I cannot keep pretending we are equals. I felt my chest tighten, not from anger, from something worse. Recognition. Like I had been waiting for this conversation without realizing it. Your friends, I repeated slowly. She nodded, her eyes already drifting away from mine. They are right. You are sweet, but you are not going anywhere. I need someone who matches where I am going. I looked at the half-finished California roll between us, the expensive steak she had ordered, the designer handbag resting on the chair beside her. When did all of this start mattering more than us? I did not argue. I did not beg. I just pulled out my wallet, placed enough cash on the table to cover my half, and said the only thing that felt true. Good luck finding what you are looking for. Then I walked out. The rain had started by the time I reached my car. I sat there for 20 minutes. Hands on the steering wheel, trying to figure out what just happened. 3 years. Gone. Because I was not impressive enough. Because I was comfortable. That night, I could not sleep. I kept replaying the conversation, analyzing every word, every look. Around 2 a.m, I did something I had never done before. I opened Reddit and typed out the whole story on a throwaway account. Not for advice. Not for validation, just to get it out of my head. The title was simple. Dumped for being too normal. I wrote about how we met at a mutual friend's wedding. How she used to love that I was steady and reliable. How somewhere along the way her priorities shifted. How her friend group, all influencers and startup founders and people who measured success in Instagram followers, started treating me like I was invisible. How she started treating me that way too. I ended the post with a question that felt pathetic even as I typed it. Maybe I am just not loud enough to sound like success. I hit submit and closed my laptop, expecting nothing. By morning, the post had 800 comments. By noon, it was on the front page. By evening, I had thousands of messages from people saying they had been there too, that they understood, that I deserved better. It was surreal. All these strangers rallying around me when the person who was supposed to know me best had decided I was not worth keeping. I did not tell anyone in my real life about the post. Not my coworkers at the aerospace firm where I had worked for 5 years. Not my college roommate who still texted me about fantasy football. Not even Lena, my colleague who brought me coffee the morning after the breakup without asking why I looked like I had not slept. The post stayed up for 3 days before I took it down. Not because I regretted it, but because I needed to move forward. Vanessa had made her choice. I needed to make mine. What I did not know then was that someone had already screenshotted the whole thing, and that within a month it would resurface in a place I never expected. But that is a story for later. For now, I had a life to rebuild, starting with figuring out who I was when I was not trying to be impressive enough for someone else. Update 1: she found someone more impressive, except he was a fraud. Life moved on faster than I expected. Work became my anchor. I am an aerospace engineer, which sounds more exciting than it actually is. Most days involve CAD software, endless emails, and meetings about thermal dynamics that could bore a robot. But there is something satisfying about solving problems that actually matter, even if nobody outside my field would ever notice. I also started working on a side project, something I had been tinkering with for years but never had the focus to finish. Seplar drone technology for disaster response. The idea is simple. Instead of one expensive drone that does everything poorly, you build a platform where different modules can snap on depending on the situation. Search and rescue needs thermal imaging. Supply drops need payload capacity. You get the idea. It was just me in my garage most nights, ordering parts online and teaching myself manufacturing techniques from YouTube. Nothing glamorous, nothing Instagram-worthy. Just work that felt meaningful. Then, one Friday, my phone buzzed with a notification I was not expecting. A podcast called Breaking Through had sent me a message. They had seen my Reddit post, the one about being dumped for not being impressive enough, and wanted me as a guest. I almost ignored it. Talking about my breakup on a podcast felt like exactly the kind of attention-seeking behavior Vanessa would have mocked me for, but the host was persistent, and eventually I agreed to a quick call. The interview was supposed to be 20 minutes. We talked for over an hour about relationships and self-worth and what success actually means when you strip away all the performance. The host was genuinely interested, not in a vulture picking at my pain way, but in a this is a universal struggle way. When the episode dropped 2 weeks later, it went viral. Like, actually viral. Millions of downloads, clips shared across social media, comments from people saying they saw themselves in my story. I was officially the humble engineer who got dumped for being too normal. It felt ridiculous and validating at the same time. Meanwhile, Vanessa had moved on spectacularly at least. That is what it looked like from the outside. Her new boyfriend was Ethan Ward, a tech investor with a carefully curated Instagram presence. Yacht parties in the San Juan Islands, cocktail events with local celebrities, press releases about his latest startup ventures. Her best friend Britt posted photos constantly. Power couple this, level up that. Every image designed to broadcast that Vanessa had traded up. I did not follow any of them, but mutual friends kept sending me screenshots with messages, like, "Can you believe this? And she is such a piece of work." I appreciated the solidarity, but mostly I just wanted to forget the whole thing. Then, about 6 weeks after the podcast episode, something strange happened at work. Our business development team forwarded an inquiry to my department. A startup called Pinnacle Innovations wanted to license some of our drone technology for a marketing campaign. Big budget, high visibility, the kind of partnership that could look great for both companies. The email thread included several names I did not recognize, and one I absolutely did. Vanessa Brooks was copied on the correspondence. Her PR firm was handling Pinnacle's public image. I felt my stomach drop. Of all the companies, of all the projects, this one had somehow landed on my desk. But here is where it gets interesting. Our legal department does due diligence on every potential partner. Standard procedure, background checks, financial reviews, the whole 9 yards. Nobody thought twice about it until they actually looked at Pinnacle Innovations. The company was a shell game. Fake investor testimonials, fabricated client lists, unpaid vendors threatening lawsuits. Ethan Ward, the impressive entrepreneur Vanessa had upgraded to, was running what amounted to a sophisticated scam. His entire empire was smoke and mirrors held together with stock photos and borrowed credibility. When our legal team flagged the issues, they sent a report to everyone on the email chain, including Vanessa. Within 48 hours, the deal was dead. Within a week, 3 different news outlets were running stories about Pinnacle Innovations and its pattern of deception. Vendors came forward. Former employees shared their experiences. The whole thing unraveled with brutal efficiency. Vanessa's PR firm had just signed a 6-month contract with Ethan's company. When the scandal broke, her bosses were furious. They suspended her pending an internal review, citing reputational risk and failure to properly vet a client. I learned all of this through a former coworker who still had connections to Vanessa's industry. He sent me the news articles with a single text: "Karma works fast, the man she left me for." The one who was supposed to represent everything I was not, turned out to be exactly what he looked like. A performance. All presentation, no substance. I wish I could say I felt vindicated. Mostly, I just felt tired. Tired of the drama. Tired of caring about someone who had decided I was not worth her time. But there was something darkly funny about the whole situation. She had wanted impressive. She had wanted someone who looked successful from the outside, and she got exactly that. Right up until the moment it all collapsed. I got back to work on my drone project. A veteran rehabilitation nonprofit had reached out after hearing the podcast, interested in funding the next phase of development. Real work, real impact, no performance required. Funny how impressive burns faster when it is built on lies. Update 2: she tried to blame me for her career imploding. Then the internet found receipts 6 months. That is how long it has been since Vanessa walked out of my life at that restaurant. Sometimes it feels like 6 years. Other times, like yesterday. Things moved fast after Pinnacle Innovations collapsed. The veteran rehabilitation nonprofit I mentioned, Operation Homeward, officially partnered with me to develop the disaster response drone system. They brought funding, expertise, and most importantly, a real mission. Suddenly my garage project had a budget, a small team, and an actual roadmap. I was not leading some massive company or anything like that. Just 3 of us full-time, plus some contractors. But it felt good, purposeful, like I was building something that mattered. The podcast that started all of this, Breaking Through, invited me back for a follow-up episode. They wanted to talk about resilience, about what happens after you get knocked down. I almost said no, worried it would look like I was milking my 15 minutes of internet fame. But the host convinced me it was less about my breakup and more about the work I was doing now. That second episode hit even harder than the first 10 million views in a week. Suddenly, I was getting messages from engineering students, from people going through breakups, from veterans who wanted to know more about the drone project. It was overwhelming in the best possible way. Then Vanessa resurfaced. It started with vague posts on her Instagram story, screenshots of quotes about betrayal, about people who build their success on others' pain, about the importance of telling your own truth. Nothing direct, just pointed enough that anyone who knew our history would understand who she was talking about. Then she sent me an email, the first direct contact we had had in months. The subject line was empty. The message was 3 paragraphs of accusations. She claimed I could have warned her about Ethan, that I knew he was a fraud when our company was doing due diligence, and I deliberately stayed silent to watch her career burn, that my podcast appearances were calculated moves to humiliate her publicly, that I was vindictive and small, and she had dodged a bullet by leaving me when she did. The email ended with a line that actually made me laugh out loud. You wanted this to happen. You wanted me ruined. I sat with that message for a full day before responding. I wanted to be angry, but mostly I was just confused. How could someone rewrite history that thoroughly? We both knew she was the one who walked away. I had not even known Ethan existed until she was already with him. My response was short. 1 sentence. I stopped saving people who do not want to be saved. Her reply came within minutes. 5 paragraphs this time, angrier, more unhinged. Accusations about my ego, about how internet fame had gone to my head, about how I was still the same mediocre person I had always been, just with better PR. The kicker was the final line. You will always be average. John, internet fame does not make you someone. I blocked her email address and moved on with my day, or I tried to, because 3 days later, someone on Reddit posted a thread that changed everything. The title was That Engineer Who Got Dumped. His ex is lying about everything. I did not see it at first. Lena, my colleague at work, sent me the link with a message that just said, "Oh no." The thread was meticulously researched. Screenshots, timelines, receipts. Someone had gone through Vanessa's professional history and discovered that she had not just failed to vet Ethan as a client. She had actively helped him. There were screenshots of her emails pitching fake success stories to media outlets. Images of sponsor decks she had designed that included fabricated revenue numbers. Testimonials from former Pinnacle employees claiming she knew exactly what kind of operation Ethan was running. She was not a victim of his scam. She was a participant. The thread blew up. Within hours, it had thousands of comments and made it to the front page of multiple subreddits. People were tagging journalists, industry watchdogs, her former clients. The internet had latched onto the story and was not letting go. I did not post anything, did not comment, did not engage at all, but my inbox flooded with messages asking if I had known, if I was involved, if I had any response. I had nothing to say. This was not my fight anymore. Within a week, Vanessa's PR license was revoked. Her firm, which had initially suspended her, terminated her contract entirely. The people she had spent years cultivating relationships with, the influencers and entrepreneurs and social climbers, all vanished from her life overnight. Britt, her best friend who had posted all those power couple photos, quietly unfollowed her across every platform. I found out through the same former coworker who had tipped me off about the Pinnacle scandal. He called me one evening, voice full of that particular satisfaction people get when the villain finally gets what they deserve. She burned every bridge, he said. Nobody in the industry will touch her now. I told him I appreciated the update and ended the call. Then I sat on my couch for a long time, trying to figure out how I felt. Relieved, maybe, vindicated, a little sad. Surprisingly, yes, Because somewhere under all the ambition and status chasing and cruelty, there had been a person I cared about, someone I had planned a future with. Watching her self-destruct, even from a distance, even after everything, was not as satisfying as I thought it would be. But I also knew I had made the right choice. Walking away that night at the restaurant, not fighting for someone who did not see my worth, focusing on work that mattered instead of performance that impressed. Karma does not need an audience. It just needs time. Final update: she showed up at my gala and realized I owned the room 1 year. That is how long it has been since Vanessa told me I was not impressive enough, and I walked out of that restaurant. I am writing this from a hotel in downtown Seattle, the morning after an event I honestly still cannot believe happened. Some of you asked me to update if anything else developed, and after last night, I figured I owed you the full story. Here's where things stand now. The disaster response drone project. The thing I was building in my garage a year ago turned into something real. We secured additional funding, brought on actual engineers, and officially incorporated as Miller Dynamics. I am the CTO, which sounds fancier than it is, but the work is exactly what I hoped it would be. Meaningful. Practical. No performance required. The veteran rehabilitation program we partnered with, Operation Homeward, became our anchor client. We have been developing assistive robotics for physical therapy, prosthetic integration tech, and mobility solutions for wounded veterans. It is the kind of work that does not get headlines but changes actual lives. Somewhere in all of that, I started dating again. Her name is Claire, and I met her when she interviewed me for a tech industry magazine about a year ago. She is a journalist, thoughtful and grounded, with exactly zero interest in Instagram aesthetics or power couple nonsense. We took things slow, got coffee, went on hikes, talked about things that mattered. It felt easy in a way my relationship with Vanessa never had. 3 months ago, I got an invitation that felt like a cosmic joke. The Tech Future Innovation Gala, a major annual event in Seattle, wanted me as their keynote speaker. They wanted to highlight Miller Dynamics and the work we were doing with veteran rehabilitation robotics. The venue was the rooftop of Altara, a high-end restaurant downtown. You can probably guess why that location felt significant. It was not the same place Vanessa and I had our final dinner, but it was close enough. Same neighborhood, same crowd, same kind of place where she had decided I was not impressive enough. I accepted the invitation. Claire came with me wearing a simple black dress that looked stunning without trying too hard. We arrived just after sunset, the Seattle skyline glowing behind us. Cameras flashing as guests arrived. I felt nervous, not because of the speech, but because of the symbolism. A year ago, I was the guy who was not ambitious enough. Tonight, I was the keynote speaker. The event was everything you would expect: tech executives, investors, journalists, startup founders, the kind of crowd that measured success in funding rounds and media mentions. I gave my speech talking about purpose over performance, about building things that matter instead of things that impress. People seemed to respond well, or at least they clapped in the right places. Afterward, I was standing near the bar with Claire and a few board members from Operation Homeward, laughing about something I cannot even remember now. That is when I saw her, Vanessa. She was alone, standing near the windows with a glass of champagne that looked mostly untouched. Her hair was different, shorter, less polished than I remembered. She wore a dress that was trying too hard, like she was cosplaying the person she used to be. Our eyes met across the room. I saw the moment she recognized me, the way her face shifted from neutral to something I could not quite read. Surprise. Regret. I do not know. She walked over slowly, the kind of approach that was clearly planned, rehearsed. "Even John," she said quietly. "It has been a while. You look different, Vanessa," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "I saw your interview on that podcast and your speech tonight. I am happy for you." "Really?" She paused, glancing at Claire, then back at me. "I was stupid. You were the real thing all along." I felt Claire tense slightly beside me, protective without being obvious about it. I looked at Vanessa, this person I had spent 3 years with, this person who had decided I was not worth keeping, and I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no sadness, just a distant recognition, like running into an old classmate whose name you barely remember. "Sorry," I said, tilting my head slightly. "Have we met?" Her face collapsed. Actually collapsed. Like I had reached inside and pulled out whatever was holding her together. John, please, do not do that. I softened my tone, but not my message. Enjoy your evening, Vanessa. Then I turned back to Claire and the conversation I had been having before the interruption. I did not watch Vanessa walk away. Did not track her reaction. Just let her fade back into the crowd. But here is the part I did not expect. The detail that makes this whole story feel like something out of a movie. About an hour later, Vanessa left early. I noticed only because the room was getting smaller as guests filtered out. She walked toward the exit, shoulders hunched, trying to disappear, and then she stopped. Right by the entrance, there was a large sign I had not paid much attention to earlier. Professional, elegant, the kind of signage you see at corporate events. This event is proudly hosted by the Miller Foundation. Below that, in smaller text, founder and director, John Miller. She stood there for at least 30 seconds, staring at the sign. I was too far away to hear anything, but I could see her mouth move, like she was talking to herself. Then she let out this short, broken laugh, the kind that is not really a laugh at all, and then she left. I learned the full story later from one of the event coordinators. Vanessa had not been invited as a guest. She had crashed the event, using an old industry connection to get past security. She had come hoping to network, to rebuild her career, to prove she still belonged in these circles. Instead, she had walked into a room I built, an event I funded, a night where I was not just a guest, but the person everyone came to see. This morning, I am sitting in a hotel room, drinking mediocre coffee and trying to process what last night meant. Claire is still asleep, and the city is quiet outside the window. A year ago, Vanessa said I was not impressive enough, that I was comfortable, that I was not going anywhere. Last night, she stood in a room I created and realized she had no idea who I actually was. I did not win her back. I did not need to. I won something better. I won myself.